All right, let's get into this because next week is the DNC. The Democratic National Convention happens. This is the 4-day pep rally. The Republicans have had theirs in Milwaukee. Chicago, Illinois will be front and center. And one of the stories, this from the Wall Street Journal, and here is one of the concerns. Harris and Chicago's mayor face migrant crisis and potential protests at the DNC. The concerns are on two fronts. One of them is that there has been a pushback from a very liberal city. And it's important because it's Democrats protesting Democrats, just like when the Republicans are pushing back and we keep hearing about the never Trumpers. That is a story, and they've been talking about it for a long time. Republicans for Harris and Republicans for Gallego and all these other things. This is an issue for them. And the issue is the Democrats, the very liberal Democrats in Chicago, have been furious with their mayor and furious with this administration because of the overwhelming number of migrants that are taking away what they say are services meant for the people of Chicago. So there are concerns about protests. The other side of that is also protests on the pro-Palestinian front, that they're furious that the Biden administration is still supporting Israel. So you are going to see these concerns as they air their grievances on the outskirts of this. Now, the way this works, this weekend as they're beginning to set things up and get things ready, everything will have to be in the venue at a certain time on Saturday. I'm just giving you the background of how they work. They will then lock it down, they will then secure it, and they will sweep it. They will make sure that nothing in that building, nothing in that area could hurt anybody. They will sweep that building and sweep all those buildings, actually, and make sure. And then on Sunday, people will be able to get in and out. But on Monday, they will push what they call the bubble way out. It will be fenced off. There will be entry points. You will have to be credentialed to get in. You will be checked. And when you bring equipment in, your bag, when I went through at the Republican National Convention, your bag is searched every single day. They turn your laptop on. They make sure your phone is really a phone. You walk through a metal detector. You get wanded. All of those things happen for security purposes because they know that protesters, and you have a First Amendment right to protest, but they keep you on the other side of the fence a safe distance away. But there will be protesters. Now, how much the media will cover this, I don't know, and that will depend on how big the protests are. There were very few in Milwaukee. At that time, there wasn't a whole lot of protests. There were some. I saw some. I went out and was going to take some pictures and videos. There really weren't that many in the areas where I was. And I don't know how big this will be, but the Wall Street Journal is talking about the concerns on these. But I want to shift to something a little bit more local. That is, here's an AZ Central story. Mary Jo Pitzel, who does a great job covering the political world over there. National Dems to pour $223,000 into battleground districts to flip Arizona legislature. Now, in the grand scheme of money being spent, $223,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, but I can promise you in our small, what they call LDs, legislative districts, the way the districts are drawn, it's just like the congressional districts, only much smaller. In these individual districts, there are some that are dark red, there are some that are dark blue, and there are some that are purple. There is a one-seat majority in both the House and the Senate for the Republicans as it stands. So if you flip one seat, you have a tie. If you flip two seats, you take over control of that chamber. And it's been decades since that's happened in Arizona that have been controlled by the Democrats. But they believe in some of these districts they can. So in a legislative district, it truly is, and I like it this way, is a grassroots campaign. You're going to if you're a Republican, you go to the Republican LD meetings, and if you're Democrat LD meetings, and you speak to civic organizations and groups, and you put signs out. Those signs are not cheap, by the way. I'll say this to you. Those signs that go out there by candidates, as much as it annoys a bunch of people, they're expensive, and the candidates spend a lot of money on them and work very hard for those signs. So when people deface them and destroy them, it's illegal. You can get in a lot of trouble for stealing them or defacing them. But that's their means of spreading their name ID. They're not necessarily their message. Sometimes it'll say police endorsed or fire endorsed or, pro this or anti that to give you a little bit of their stance. But in these small legislative districts, usually what you get is that grassroots. 223,000. So you know, divide it up, you get 40,000 maybe in a district somewhere. That's one that's you get that person to be able to put their message on what's called a palm card or a mailer, and you get that in the mail when ballots go out that just says, hey, I'm so-and-so, I have a family with this many kids, I live in your neighborhood, we know this is what our neighborhood needs, and I want to go into the legislature and I want to fight for that. If nothing else, it's one more touch point and one more thing for people to see. This is where my issue with the AZ GOP comes into more focus, and it's this. I'm a Republican. I want to see the Republicans expand their majority in the legislature to offset the policies of the governor. I have nothing against the governor personally. I met her. As a matter of fact, I approached her. I was at a playoff game with the D-backs last year, and she happened to be sitting right near where I was, and I just went up and said hello. I think she deserves the respect of the title of governor, and I just went to say I want to say hello to her. I've got no personal axe to grind with anyone. But I don't think her policies are the right ones for Arizona. So I want to see a Republican-controlled legislature that can offset those policies and have more strength in negotiation so that the right policies, the ones we've seen for the last decade that have gotten Arizona's economy to where it is, stay and stand and continue to move forward. That's my personal political belief. The AZ GOP has to understand that with the razor-thin margin in the legislature and the hope that has been given to Democrats, you better have a plan. And that's got to include a lot of money to offset those touch points in those swing districts, in those districts that are difficult. And you've got the Democrats that are saying they can smell blood in the water. Here's our opportunity. We're going to do everything we can. And for me, I just would say this is the issue where when the Republican Party used to have a huge majority in Arizona, and let's be honest, the AZ GOP was wealthy. Wealthy donors, they were well-funded, they were well-organized, they donated money everywhere, they helped candidates across the state get their message out and win once the primaries were over. And there's a reason why they call it the GOP, the Grand Old Party. And so I'm anxious to see how this plays out. From an observer's point of view, can the Democrats pull this off? Now what we're also going to see is after the DNC, I believe the questions are going to start ramping up. The questions about Vice President Harris, I have a story about her and the donations and the blog post she wrote, raising money for people that had been arrested during riots, and I'm not saying everybody in the Black Lives Matter movement was rioting, but during those riots, during the time when people were looting and rioting, and she was raising money for their bail. The posts are out there. She's going to have to answer for those. She's going to have to answer for her economic policy that she's going to lay out. This is the time where they are going to have their honeymoon. They deserve it. Here's your 4 days. Will the corner turn after that? That's always been the question.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.